Are we ready? Welcome. This is the April 16th, 2026 Estes Park School District R3 Board of Education special meeting is now 2:50 p.m. and this meeting is called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chris, please conduct a board roll call.
Director Furey,
Here.
Director Shockett,
Here.
Director Wojcicki,
Here.
Director Wiss. Here.
Moving on to approval of agenda, board members have an agenda before you. At this time, I'll take any comments or amendments to the current agenda. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Chris, please conduct a board roll call. Aye.
Director Shockett,
Aye.
Director Wojcicki,
Aye.
Director Wiss. Aye.
Ayes carry the vote. Agenda is approved. Moving on to agenda item 2, superintendent interviews. 2-1, do you want us to wait till 3 or do you want us to keep going? You good with that, Mr. Grubbs? All right. So Mr. Grubbs, welcome this evening. Just reminder, we have 45 minutes, and for the public and all the stakeholders in the audience or watching over online, we are encouraging you, the board would encourage you to provide feedback for the link, or there is a QR code found on the Estes Park School District website. All feedback will be reviewed by the board. So we welcome Mr. Grubbs this I guess afternoon. Thank you. Oh, I don't think it's mic.
Got it pushed up there. Is that better?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. I got it. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
For the first question, you have spent a full day in the district. What are your thoughts and highlights of the day? What do you know now that you didn't know before? And why do you feel you're a good fit for superintendent position in the Estes Park community?
Well, it was a pleasure. I had a great time. It was fun to see the community in a very different lens. I've been here many times before as either a tourist or a hunter or fisherman. So to put on a different hat was a great opportunity. Eric, the director of safety and security, gave us a tour of where the buses would go. That was something that struck me right off the bat. Eric was extremely well-spoken and does 3 different jobs that would be, done by a different person in a larger district. And so he immediately gained my respect and appreciation for, you could feel the love for what he was doing, because he has also even been a former board member, he told me. And so to be that invested in the community was a great way to start the interview process. So in that opportunity, also then got to tour the buildings, got to talk to a number of people in that regard, and just see it for myself and breathe it in. So the second part of your question, you asked what were my initial thoughts? What was the second part then?
How do you feel? Are you a good fit for the superintendent position in our community?
Yeah. I believe I absolutely am. I think the appreciation that I have for the opportunity, in addition to the skill sets that I have, and hearing the way people have answered my question, it feels like a win-win. And that's important to me. I've really been invested the last couple of years as a leader in me leader. And that habit of seek win-win is evident. Being a rural Colorado native myself, I'm very appreciative to be in an area like this. You add on my skill sets to that attitude, and I think you got a win-win.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, there was one more piece to that question. It does say, what do you know now that you didn't know before about Estes?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. There's definitely a sense of pride on the website and in having conversations with folks. And yet, like every school district in the state, there are some things that are very concerning to folks. And so knowing too about the hard work that we would have to do is going to involve conflict resolution, some unique ideas about how to use our money with the budget looking as bleak as it is for the state. It wasn't as much a new thing, but it's the same problem in different areas. And so we just have an opportunity to do it differently than other folks.
All right. How do you intend to establish clear accountability structures within our district to ensure that all stakeholders, including staff, administrators, and students, are held to high standards of performance and conduct?
It would start with a review of what you already have. Again, in visiting with people who have been in the district for a while, there are some really great things to celebrate that I do think include accountability. How that gets communicated out, or what are people's perceptions of that, that's something that I would have to evaluate once being fortunate enough to sit in that seat. But I think you set high goals and then you make those measurements. You've done that in the strategic plan already. There were some first year, second year, third year measuring points that have been hit, and the celebrating of those measures, that needs to happen. That would be something I would embrace. I think the other part where we came up a little short is just ask why. What do we need to do a little bit differently? What do we need to put some time and money into? What do we need to think about differently? And then again, you set those goals and you get people to agree to those goals. That's the other key element that I think is important as a leader, is get people to be very transparent. If they don't agree with the goal, we need to hear that. Like, tell us why. What is it about this rule that you fundamentally disagree with? And then give me an alternative that's going to be a little bit of a negotiation point to where we're still doing what's best for kids.
How will you demonstrate your commitment to the community as superintendent, ensuring that the needs and aspirations of our stakeholders are prioritized and addressed?
Well, something I'm very appreciative of is the schedule for the interview process, because it did give me some time to actually go to some places here in town that are supportive of the district. This morning, I went to the library, visited with them about some of their connections with the foundation, went to the rec center, heard Tom's, perspective of the partnership between the school district and the community and the schools. Even visited with a restaurant owner about some of their pros and cons of how things are going. So I think I would definitely invest time to do that more. Go talk to people. I realize a big part of being the superintendent is being the face of the district and the board, making sure that I'm clear with what your vision is, making it our vision, and then going out and help people see the picture of what that vision actually looks like. The biggest reason we're here is to educate our youth, right? That's typically a very passionate area for people. I mean, as parents, that's why some of you are sitting up there. So when the goal is do what's best for kids, and you go talk to a community member that maybe doesn't have kids in the district, but understands the importance of that partnership, that's what will show my commitment to it. If we can work together to where it's a win-win, and remind people how important it is to educate these kids in the best way we can. Windsor sits between the Poudre School District in Fort Collins, and then Thompson and Loveland and Greeley. All three of those are much bigger than we are. And there are times where, the base pay is higher for a new teacher coming in. When I select candidates to interview, I put the focus on the quality of the job and the fact that there are other opportunities that they can do to earn extra money while they're there. And I have, in fact, proudly stole teachers from those other surrounding districts to come to Windsor. So much of it is how you treat people, the opportunities that you put in front of them to be influential to kids and make that progress. And yeah, if it boils down to the pure dollar amount, I do understand we can't always win those battles, but I have definitely done a good enough job as a building leader that people have wanted to come to my building and took less money. One in particular, it was a $10,000 cut. And yeah, that family situation might have been a little bit different, but the way you treat people and the way you set up their environment, that matters too. So that would be something I would do as a superintendent, is put a lot of focus on the fact this is a very unique place to live in the world. There are a lot of other gifts around us besides just the bottom line dollar, and promote that and get the teachers that are staying here to also promote that amongst their peers. That goes a long ways.
Thank you. What leadership habits and behaviors do you have that demonstrate you are the instructional leader for the school district? And give us an example, please.
When you're in a school, again, it's about the kids, and you need to have a healthy balance as a leader of the science of teaching and the art of teaching. And I've been able to do both in my role. Sometimes it boils down to going into a classroom and demonstrating it. And if that means I do it myself and get teachers to understand that I have that passion for connecting with kids, that's an opportunity that I've taken advantage of. Other times it's recognizing I might not have the skill sets when it comes, or experience when it comes to secondary schools, but I've got connections. And so you make those connections with others, you bring them in, you have them demonstrate it, and then you look at the data. From a superintendent's point of view too, things that I would bring to the table as far as experience is that MTSS structure of sitting down and identifying what is the one key thing that's going to give us a leverage point for this kid to have some success. And you put the intervention in place and you test it religiously to make sure that they're making that progress, and then you celebrate that. And if it's not changing them, then you change your strategy. The same can be true with adults. You sit down with a staff member, you set a goal for them, you make sure that they've got the intervention they need if necessary, and you come back to it and see how the growth is going.
As superintendent, how will you foster an atmosphere in the district where teachers and staff feel supported, empowered, valued, and able to reach their full potential?
Well, it starts with some of the same conversations I've had these last couple of days with each and every group. Again, I was very impressed with how Eric embraced his multiple roles versus, talked about it as a burden. Like I have to wear all these hats. It was an honor to be that skilled. And I would try to highlight more people like that as we get to know one another. I also could hear the passion in one of the staff members' voices that she needed extra support. And I could picture other teachers that I've worked with in the past that, again, are very passionate about what they're doing. They want to feel successful. And when they're not, they wear those emotions on their sleeves. And so having conversations about what's a one tangible thing we could add to your job to empower you versus it's another task you have to do, that framing of that is something that I think I do well. And that would be the skill set that I would want to bring to this job.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question. You said that Eric embraced wearing multiple hats, and I wonder how you would feel about taking that on as a superintendent as well, or do you think maybe that's not the role of the superintendent?
If I can drive the bus, you mean? Because I've done that before too. Actually, I've taken kids to a hockey game in a bus. So, I do feel like throughout my career, I've tried to celebrate a balance in everything I do. I try to make my teams really well balanced, reminding people about finding balance between work and personal life. And the same when it comes to servant leadership versus delegation. And a fun story that I told one of the groups recently is about a book that was given to me by the librarian within my first couple of years because she noticed I was shoveling the sidewalks. And it's called The Dog Poop Initiative. And it's a silly rhyming kids book, but it is about a dog owner that doesn't pick up after his dog who takes a dump on the soccer field. And when all the kids show up to have their game, people point it out, watch out here, don't step in the dog poop. And the kids literally play around it the first game. And when the dad coach of the next team shows up, he gets a newspaper, he scoops it up, he takes care of the problem. And his son looks up to him in admiration, and the next day picks up trash at school. And so I think having a balance between knowing when to empower and delegate certain tasks and picking up the poop is an important job of a leader, because that leadership is about choices, not position. And so if given the opportunity to put on multiple hats, I would do that with a smile, because it's an honor to be able to be this influential.
Describe your experience supporting special education, multilingual learners, and inclusive practices for diverse student needs.
My school currently is the center-based program for our district for kiddos that are significantly impacted by autism. And many of them are nonverbal. And when they are trying to communicate something, whether it's even happiness or sadness, it comes out in almost physical aggression many times. That program has been in our building for about the last 6 years. And so I have had a chance to see the kiddo that dropped to the ground and pounded his head on the sidewalk when he first came, to where I might get emotional. When he was a fifth grader, he sang a solo. And sticking with what works and being patient and being kind, it pays off. And the powerful message that he taught his peers about accepting him, that was our job as leaders and teachers, is continue to put your faith and love into these kiddos that don't have a great voice, because when they get on stage and they sing that solo, oh my gosh, bring a grown man to tears. I was just so proud. So what I've also learned being the leader of that program is it's definitely worked by the people that don't get a lot of glorious recognition. And so I've tried very hard to also be creative in how we support them in whether it's professional development opportunities, or it is giving them a chance to have a little bit of voice as well and what's going to happen next for those kids, being creative with some of their time off, those types of things. When it comes to multi-language learners, again, the amount of students that I've had to gotten to work with hasn't been as high, but again, equally as powerful. We've gotten families to come in and have a chance to talk face to face with them. And that word of mouth, I think, really helps others know that we do care about them. And just because there's a language barrier doesn't mean there's a love barrier. And so we can get those families in the door, get them a little bit of support. That goes a long ways.
What does an effective superintendent-board relationship look like to you, particularly around communication, decision-making, and governance role?
It does feel formal to me, and yet you're people. So I want to know more about your why. Again, you're elected officials that don't get paid to do this. So you obviously are passionate about having your own voice. When it comes to the governance too, I've done my homework on President Free that you follow the policy very well and you know it. And so I'll put a lot of trust in you, having faith in me as a person. We're going to use that balance to get our goals met. Hopefully we'd have a chance to even do some learning together at maybe CASB or any other organizations that are designed just for this. I do feel like your decision to invest in a search company too shows me that you want to be as non-biased as possible and do what's very best for kids. And yet again, your hearts are in it for the right reasons. So that starts us off on the right foot, in my opinion. And yeah, I will need some brushing up on some of the governance stuff.
What do you do to encourage participation of employees in organizational decisions?
Just recently, I've had to remind my staff that if they don't speak up, that is still sending a message. And so there has to be some trust that when they do express an opinion about something, I'm going to listen to them. But if they don't speak up, then they need to trust me as the leader to make a decision and move on. So a staff member, I believe, last night in the community forum was focusing a little bit on too. We collect data as a district, but then the emotional piece doesn't always match the data. And how can we just double check that? I think it's important to be very thorough. Give them multiple ways to speak up. Give them the opportunity to visit face to face. I think too the emotional part of a conversation is important, just as much as the convenience of a survey should be used as well too. It's important to give them time to do those. Any staff survey that I give my teachers now, I try to schedule it during the day. Like when we have a staff meeting, before they listen to my jokes or silly stories, do the staff survey and give them time to do it versus I'm in the middle of grading and getting ready, and now I got a survey waiting in my email. Yeah, that survey is important. So, between this time and that time, we'll have you do it. So, is there more to that question? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Describe a time you had to make a difficult decision or address a significant problem directly. What did you do and what did you learn?
Well, nearly every decision's significant when you're an educational leader because what you think is insignificant means a ton to somebody else. Most recently, when it came to conflict between some staff members, we had to again sit down and address the elephant in the room. There's tension. The tension has caused less communication, and when there's less communication, the kids are the ones that end up suffering. And when you make it as black and white as you can for that situation, you have people that will make some concessions and try to be a little bit more tolerant, maybe of someone else, or maybe someone else needs to step up their organizational skills in a different way. Again, going back to the leader in me 7 habits of highly effective people. One of those habits is seek to understand before being understood. And so when you ask those questions with someone who's having that conflict, help me understand your perspective. Why is this a problem to you? What is the mitigating factor that's causing you to be upset about this? And really role modeling that listening, being willing to make some concessions or some being flexible on certain things, usually get some give and take from other folks in that regard. District-wide challenge that I've gotten to be a part of is addressing the inequities between elementary plan time and secondary plan time. And our district has asked me to be a voice within those conversations, just again, based on not only my experience at the elementary level, but some creative ideas that we can bring as well too. Sometimes you're going to have to compare apples to oranges, and the types of work that a secondary teacher has to do is very different than an elementary person. And so sometimes the more plan time, it might not ever whittle down to where it's totally equal. But if you can, again, provide different opportunities for those elementary folks to where they're still getting their job done, then that becomes your win-win. And so those are some things I've been involved in lately.
How do you balance honoring a district's existing strengths and strategic plan while also moving the organization forward to address existing challenges?
I had the opportunity to do that before. The building that I've been in charge of was only 3 years old when I took over. And they already had really high scores. They had pretty well-behaved kiddos, very forward-thinking staff. These were staff members who left their previous school to come to this brand new school, so willing to take some risks. And yet, when I got there, I discovered that they had decided that they didn't want to do PBIS. Kids should innately, want to succeed, and we don't want to give them tokens or trinkets. And so I took one of the veteran teachers with me to a training on PBIS, and I let someone else beside myself talk about the pros and cons of what it can do for kids and how it can be successful. So I would have a very similar approach. Get settled, get to know the district, get to know the people, find out what's going on. But then, okay, here's what I've seen in the world in my 30 years in education. This hasn't worked for me, but it's working for you. Gosh, what are you doing? What's your secret sauce? Celebrate the wins for sure, but be willing to throw some ideas out there. I think when I first came, I wanted to make it a point that I'm not here to change things, because I do hear so much about how things are positive, but I'm confident enough to say I've got some good ideas just in kicking around some things with the folks the other day. So I'll find the balance.
What kind of authority do you give to principals, and how do you hold them accountable?
Well, when it comes to authority, do you mean for them to make decisions based upon what they believe is best for their building? Or what kind of a, I know you're just reading the question, Frank. I hate to put you on the spot. You want to call a friend?
Well, what kind of authority would you give them? And how would you trust them to do what you told them? Or
Well, when you explicitly give people that trust, they typically are not going to want to let you down. I don't think you've hired anyone already that you don't trust to make a good decision. And as people, we're going to mess up. We're going to make a mistake. So the trust will be built even more if I empower them to make a decision, and then we reflect on that decision and decide what can we do to make it even better. Or, yeah, you knocked it out of the park. Good job. I feel like at times too, when principals are out of the building, taking care of the things they have to take care of, and someone who is not considered an administrator is empowered to act on their behalf, it's very similar to that relationship. And those people themselves, they might be very nervous about it because they don't want to mess it up, but when they get it right too, their confidence is going to grow. So for me as a superintendent, empowering principals means let's talk about some what ifs. We're not going to we're not going to get everyone, but we're going to talk about these things in advance and have a feel for it. And then you empower them and you back them up when it's right and you celebrate that. You're going to be fine. There's a second part about accountability too, though, right? No, that's good. All right.
So, Mr. Grubbs, do you have any questions for us at this time?
Do.
Yeah.
I do have a few. Restorative justice. I've heard you talk about that as a something that's very important to the district. I know that it's designed to repair any harm that's done to the victim that was caused in a conflict versus just punishment. But can you tell me a little bit more about what you've invested in? Is it a philosophy, or is there specific training that you've already invested in to empower those teachers to do restorative justice? Okay.
Bodie here.
I'm glad you asked about it. Yes and yes. We brought in a lot of training for our teachers quite a while ago, probably nearly 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. We hired Mary Barron, who you met, who is our current assistant principal at the middle school. She came in as a restorative coordinator for the district on a grant initially when she first started, and spent 3 years invested in training with administrators and teachers. And we have an incredible partnership with our local police department, the Restorative Justice with our police department, where we have a great partnership we have volunteers in our community that are really highly trained in facilitating restorative conversations. So sometimes we utilize them and they volunteer and come in and help facilitate conversations between staff members when it gets to a level where we don't feel like our training is enough to lead that conversation. So we're really lucky in our community to have that partnership and be able to utilize that and have those volunteers that partner with us when we need to call for help as well. But restorative justice, the philosophy, yes. The training, yes. Or restorative practices. One thing that we learned along this process is that what restorative practices is a replacement for any consequences for behavior. And so it's super important to understand that we have a behavior code of conduct. And when that behavior code of conduct is broken, there is consequences for that. The restorative work is really what comes after to repair the harm that is done for the individuals involved and help students change the behavior and become better people.
Thank you. Another question that I had was in preparing for big decisions like the planning of the facility changes. I had it again on my tour. It was explained to me that some of the facilities, as they're getting older, there's talk about how to really change those. The emotional ties that come with educational buildings can run pretty deep, traditions. And I went there as a kid and I can't imagine that building being torn down, kind of thing. How do you as a board kind of weigh that data of people's emotional perception with the, rational, it's broken, we need to fix it. And when we fix it, it may change the look on it. Have you had a chance to kind of put that together as a themed unit? How you balance that?
Sure, I can make an attempt. Have we discussed it as a unit? No, not yet, because we're kind of still in that process, right? We're still coming up with the plan. Actually, I believe next month we're going to be talking about it with the contractor that we hired. Yes, there is that. One of the ways that we've addressed that is that we've brought the community in from the beginning to the process. So when we are having these meetings every month throughout this entire school year, there's 30, 40 people in there, students, staff, and just community members, whoever wanted to sign up and volunteer that time to be part of the process. So they've been in there from the beginning. And then on the emotion side, the part we're trying to get to now is, well, if it's different, what could it look like? Kind of some excitement for, yes, it's different, is scary, but an exciting future.
I relate it to, just to add to what Brad said, is similar to this process. Getting our community input and involving our community is very important to break that barrier of that emotion. We recently had a request for an organization to use our Top Field, our very emotional part of our community, and we learned very quickly that Top Field has a lot of emotions. So I think for me, it is once we can zero in on more what our original committee is doing, making sure we do a good job of communicating and involving our public and our community in those decisions moving forward.
Well, on a personal note, the building that I grew up in as a student over on the Western Slope was a K-12 building. It was separated by the gym, basically, between the elementary and the secondary. And in January, they had they called it the last dance in the gym. They set up tables. And I got to go back. So as a student athlete who played basketball in that gym and watched, my high school heroes in that gym, it was a little emotional thinking they're going to tear it down, right? So I do think it's wise to have a celebration recognition of those emotions because, the people that were taxpayers back in the 60s were the ones that built that. And as a kid who graduated in 1990, that was a gift, and now they've built another beautiful facility that the next generation will get to see. So I think it's wise to involve them early and get their voice in it, because that building will still be here when they're long gone. So, social media has a tendency to give voice to those who criticize leaders. I find most people who have not been a leader themselves are the loudest and the most vocal. Do you have kind of a stance on how you respond to that really negative bashing that sometimes happen? Do you put a voice back out there, or do you accept the fact that, no matter what we say, someone's always going to squeak on social media?
So I can speak for myself. I do not respond to any social media. Like, I'm not even hardly on social media. What I place more value in is having a conversation when someone reach out to me or responding in my emails. Our community does a good job, I believe, in sending emails with concerns, especially on emotional topics. So I think as a board member, for me, it's looking at my email, keeping up with that as much as possible, and making sure we respond and always offer a meeting when you can see it's a highly emotional conversation. And people have good input as well. So that's how you stay connected with the community as well. For me, that's what I do. Outreach, having coffees, doing walks, what have you. So, but for as far as the social media, we do have a website. We just kind of combined all of our social media website. And we can probably talk that because I wasn't behind the scenes on all of that. But I just take social media with a grain of salt for me personally.
Kind of same here. I'm not really on social media at all, but I am in the district all the time. With 2 kids in the district, I'm always around. So people stop me all the time and ask questions that way. It's far more effective. Yeah.
Likewise, I think our community is really good at kind of policing itself. And so we don't need to jump in because others will jump in on our behalf. So just kind of monitor the narrative and make sure, that no glaring untruths are out there and going unchecked.
Excellent. Thank you.
I just want to answer about our stance as an administrative team. Untruths are out there all the time. That's not something we're going to respond to. We'll control our narrative through our tools. But when we do need to respond is when it's out of protection of our students. If there is FERPA laws being violated, or there's slander and libel out there against our students or our staff, that's where then we're going to intervene.
Well, the last question that I have for you is when you picture me sitting up there in that seat a year from now, what will some of the success indicators look like for me?
I think the number one thing will be that the forward momentum that the district has been working on for, the last 4 years, that continues, that there's not a step backward, you know? You said that you don't want to come in and change everything, but you do have some good ideas, and we are not opposed to change as long as it is forward moving, So thank you.
For me, it's working collaborative and keeping students front in mind and what's best for them. So, like Brenda said, we've had great academic success brought on by Ruby and her leadership, and our students are moving forward, and we are very student-centered thinking. And I think keeping that in mind as we're making decisions and moving forward, to me, that is a great benefit for our community and our students.
Yeah, with academics, test scores, but also with some of like our surveys. We survey our students, we survey our staff, we survey our community, and to make sure that things are heading in the right direction that way also.
Those are all the questions I have for you. Do you have any last ones for me?
Nope.
Then, if I may, just close with thank you again for this opportunity in chatting with the folks involved. It's been a great honor to just get to share a little bit because it reaffirms what's really important to me. When I've talked with so many different groups, I've caught myself saying the same thing over and over, and so it's reaffirmed some of my core beliefs is the importance of balance, and that I want to be that servant leader, and I am ready to take on the step of the superintendent and lead the charge with you. Those habits that I've been living the last several years, in particular in teaching to students, I really feel set me up for success when it comes to embracing your global outcomes, embracing the work that you've already done. I've done that before. I've followed in the footsteps of a really dynamic leader and taken the school even farther. And I know I have the ability to do that for an entire district. And having the pride of being a Colorado native and getting to even be here, I would not take advantage of, and that would drive me to make you guys proud. So I do hope as you're deliberating, you keep that in mind, because it's sometimes I feel awkward talking about myself. I'm pretty humble by nature, but I'm confident enough to say you've been making a good choice if you hire me.
Thank you. So we'll be taking a short break. Well, welcome, Mr. Casey. Excited you're here today. Just a reminder, you'll have 45 minutes. So starting with our first question. You spent a full day in the district. What are your thoughts and highlights of the day? What do you know now that you didn't know before? And why do you feel you're a good fit for the superintendent position in the Estes Park community?
All right. Starting off easy with a 4-part question, I see. So so the thoughts on the district, why I think what I know now that I didn't, okay. Got it. It's been a great couple of days getting to know some people and touring the district and the facilities and making some of those initial connections. Obviously, there's only so much connecting that happens in a quick 2-day thing. Getting to meet some of the students today was really fun with the high schoolers. Kind of seeing on the tour yesterday, seeing some of the elementary and middle schoolers also. I think my connection to Estes so far has always been, I mean, other than my one summer living at the YMCA, but visiting, right? And understanding that visiting is very different than being a part of the community. And so a little window into what it can be like to join the community and get to know people on a deeper level and the people who are here all the time, as opposed to people that are just walking down the street a day at a time. Things that I've learned that I didn't know before. I think fleshing a lot of details out. I will say the school website and district website has a whole lot of stuff on it, which is awesome. So that helps me feel more prepared and have a lot of research available. But to talk through some of the details with Superintendent Bodie and with Brian about the finances and to go see the facilities in person, to talk through a couple of the ideas in the facility master plan, like to put some meat to that skeleton that I had built, has really been insightful and helpful. And the opportunity to talk to real people. It's different than reading a bio on a website. And to stand with the principal and assistant principal today at lunch duty for a little while and chat about their families a little bit and find out what the policies are around school safety because the kids brought it up in the meet and greet. To meet people in the community last night that came because they had something they cared about, and then to have little conversations afterwards. Those are the connections that you can't make on Zoom or a website research or those kinds of things, to get to know real people in a real school that really have kids they care deeply about, that we want to build that together and work together for the things that matter most to them. Did I get all the parts? No. Good fit. Okay. So I'm a people person. And so when I say getting to know people, that's where that fit comes in, right? To be able to meet with administrators and directors, to meet with staff yesterday, to feel like there's a common continuity and support system, and that I can step in to a place that is doing really well and be a support and to continue the momentum that's going really well. That feels like a really good fit. I'm not interested in going somewhere that's on fire, right? I want to go somewhere that's being successful, where I can get to know people and figure out how to support them and how my unique gifts and skills might help do that. And also, like I talked with the teachers yesterday, put little sticky notes in every drawer in the office that say, don't screw it up. There's really good things happening. Let's make sure we keep those good things going. And then as we have things we need to tweak or adjust, great, but there's really good things happening. So just keep it going.
All right. How do you intend to establish clear accountability structures within our district to ensure that all stakeholders, including staff, administrators, and students, are held to high standards of performance and conduct?
That's a great question. And interestingly, one I got from a high school kid today, similarly. So I don't know if he has a parent on the board. I didn't ask that. But we have a lot of opportunities in education for accountability. And some of those are state level things, data that we get from state testing, teacher evaluation, and those are good starts. We also need to continue doing things that give us benchmarks along the way to know that we're reaching those things. And then the accountability of those indicators of the strategic plan. How are we meeting those 3 areas. And I love that there's already sort of agreed upon measures of how we're doing that, and that the trends are really good. And so that we can take student data and say, here's the trend in how we're growing. And we're seeing it in benchmark testing, we're seeing it in state testing, we're seeing it in our school performance frameworks. Those are continuing to grow. We also have the data around experiential learning. How are we getting those experiences to students? How are they responding to them? And then the wellness and the side of like community perception, student perception, there's already data in place and systems in place to make sure that we're being accountable to the plan that is in place, that we're continuing to build that as a district. So in those senses, there's a lot of structures already there for accountability. And then I think the next part of that as a new superintendent is making sure that I also come in and build that trust that's already here and needs to be rebuilt with a new person so that we can have hard conversations. So that when the data doesn't indicate something we're crazy about, or when there's little blips for some reason, we're not trying to explain it away, but we're willing to have the hard conversations about, oh, is this a correction we need to make? Or is this, maybe it is a blip in the data, but let's make sure, let's not write it off. And the accountability of being honest with each other is a huge part of that. And it takes a little time to build that trust as a new person. But it's an important first step.
Thank you. How will you demonstrate your commitment to the community as superintendent, ensuring that the needs and aspirations of our stakeholders are prioritized and addressed?
So one of the great things about this job is to get to be the person who tells so many great stories about what's going on to all the stakeholders. And like I said, the website already does a great job of that. I'm sure there are other ways that that's being communicated out already. The opportunity to be sort of the ambassador and the chief cheerleader, probably without the skirt, but to be the person that tells the great stories of what's happening in our schools. And then to hear from stakeholders, what do they need from our schools? How are our graduates doing when they get out in the community, either while they're in school or after? What are people seeing in their own children that they want the school to meet certain needs? And so listening to the community, to parents, to students, to staff, all of those stakeholders have an important voice in making sure that we're not losing our way. And that we can be excited about the things that are happening. Certainly there's times we need to talk about problem solving and issues that are going on, and we need to always be telling the good stories also. Sometimes those don't get enough press. You guys do a great job of celebrating staff and students in those ways, and we need to continue to do that because people need to hear the great things kids are doing.
What experience do you have recruiting and retaining high-quality staff, teachers, particularly in places where housing and comprehensive or affordability might be barriers?
Well, I tried to tell staff that my first goal was going to be get the cost of living down. I don't think that's maybe within my scope of power in this case. Recruiting staff, hugely important. Recruiting and retaining, right? Getting the best teachers and keeping the best teachers in front of students is a key to having a successful program. The recruiting, well, so they're both very different, right? Recruiting, we need to make sure that we're competitive in how, as much as we can be, in the kinds of benefits and things we're offering for teachers. When they're first coming in, they're looking at the dollar sign on the salary scale. They're looking at the benefits. They're looking at, can I find a place to live? How does commuting work? I know a decent percent of the staff already commute. Can we make that workable for people? So the recruiting side is a lot about advertising, and then when they get here, making sure that principals, hiring committees, my office, that we are telling people how great it is to work here, right? And part of it is look out the windows, right? It's a great, beautiful place to be. And I know I've heard a lot about the wind this week, but maybe we pick calm days for our recruiting days. And then once we can get people in the door, and tell them how great it is to work here, then they've got to feel supported and connected to stay. A mentor of mine, Dr. McLean, a longtime superintendent, talked about that salary is actually pretty far down the list on why people leave jobs, right? Certainly when they first take a job, that's a key component. But the reason they stay is because number one, they like the people they work with. Do they have connections with their colleagues? Number two, they feel like they have what they need to be successful and that there's a work environment and resources and materials that help them be successful. 3 or 4 is, do they feel supported by their supervisor? Do they have a connection with their administrator that helps them feel supported in that? 4th, 5th, 6th, somewhere down the line is salary. It's on the list, but it's not in the top 3. If we can get good people in here because it's beautiful, because we did a good job recruiting and telling those stories, and then we can help them feel that connection and support, then they're going to want to stay for a long time, and that benefits our kids.
So what leadership habits and behaviors do you have that demonstrate you are the instructional leader for the school district? And give us an example.
Leadership habits and behaviors. So I think the first thing that comes to mind, I think I've mentioned that I'm pretty relational. One thing I try to do, and I've heard other people this week mention it also, is if I have a quick message that I could send an email, I would much rather get up and walk there because of what you see and hear and the conversations you have along the way there and back. So if I need to, I don't know, give something to the high school principal, to get out of my office, walk down the hill, maybe walk through the elementary and middle school on my way, see things that are going on, right? To have structures that where I plan to be in buildings and seeing what's happening in classrooms and listening to kids, and I love hearing what's happening through classroom doors, right? That you can hear engagement, that you can hear excitement, that you can stop by and see kids who are doing a brain break and getting their moving a little bit and then right back to their math, right? Those kinds of things I think make a huge difference as a leader. And when you can give those little encouragements along the way, like, hey, I saw something really cool you just did. One of my first years as a principal, I love telling this story. I had a teacher who was retiring. She was on a 110 year. She had like officially retired before I even got there. But every time I went in her room, she was like, "What'd you see? Was I doing okay? Was it okay?" And I was like, "Listen, I couldn't fire you if I wanted to. And what you're doing is great." Like, she was a math teacher, 7th grade math, and she had those kids cruising. And some of the kids didn't like how hard she made them work, and they would complain about it. But what was crazy was there was a pretty steady stream of sophomores, juniors, and seniors coming back to get help from her because they knew, one, she could help them, and she could push them, and she cared about them. So the very last day of school, and in middle school, often we turn in grades before we're even done with students, right? So very last day of school, grades have been turned in for a couple days. Most people are cleaning their classroom, watching a movie, having a party, doing fun things with kids. And I walk by her classroom, and she has them just hammering inverse fractions because she knows next year that's going to be the thing that trips them up. She's literally like 45 minutes from retirement, and she's doing inverse fractions. And so to get in there and encourage people that way, to build that sense of we're doing this together. This year, we've really emphasized professional learning communities. We got it inside the school day every hour or an hour every week so that we could build that consistency of it. We're looking at student data. We're making sure that we're making changes to our practices that affect the classroom. And each department has a different thing, right? My English department is doing inquiry journals, and they're going like crazy at it. My social studies department is working on critical thinking skills and how they're teaching that. They had different needs as a department, but they're pushing forward in ways that help kids.
All right. As superintendent, how will you foster an atmosphere in the district where teachers and staff feel supported, empowered, valued, and able to reach their full potential?
Specifically, teachers and staff in this one? Okay. I like that there's a little green light to warn me who's about to talk. That's kind of nice. Okay. So how do we help teachers feel empowered and supported to reach their full potential? Am I getting that? Okay. I think a lot of that works through how we're doing things like professional learning communities, their connection with their principals. How am I supporting principals to create that culture where they feel safe to try things, to risk things, to know that when you're making an effort to do something creative with students, it might flop the first couple times. But are you reflective about it? Are you building that skill in a way that shows that you're doing it as a professional, right? And then are we treating you as a professional? Are we handling, as administrators, are we handling our jobs in a way that clearly communicates, we see you as professionals who are experts in what you do. You work with our kids every day. You know them, not as well as their parents, but probably next, right? And so are we trusting you, empowering you, supporting you, helping you take those risks, helping you walk it back when it doesn't work and figure out a new way, celebrating when it does work? And are we supporting that with the right materials? Do we have curriculum that gives you what you need to get there? Do we have training that gives you what you need to get there? Some teachers, I mean, they're ready to try everything all the time, and they'll jump in. I've got one of the art teachers I've worked with will just jump in and try new stuff and new classes all the time. And then there's a social studies teacher, like, they want to know that it's going to work and they want to see the data and the research before they jump out to that, right? So understanding the different needs of different teachers, and each of them are doing great things for students. How are we celebrating that? How are we empowering and encouraging it? And then how are we listening when they need to know somebody's got my back and they're going to push me and help me get better?
Describe your experience supporting special education, multilingual learners, and inclusive practices for diverse student needs.
Special ed, multilingual, and inclusive practices. Okay. I love this question. So when I first got to university, I got assigned to support the special ed team group, and we met weekly. One of my favorite meetings, it was counselors, special ed, multilingual, school nurse, therapist when we had one. But it's basically a group of people working with the kids who have very unique struggles, and how are we making sure we're talking about individual kids to get them what they need to be successful. When I became principal 4 years later, after being the AP for 4 years, that was redundant, sorry. Then I kept that group because I just love doing that. We get to, as administrators, support the creative problem solving of those unique specific needs, right? And sometimes it works in groups, right? Some things that work for my multilingual learners are good for lots of kids, and we can do it en masse. And sometimes it's designing very specific needs. When I first got to Bennett, I think maybe my second month as an administrator, a new family moved in and they had a student who needed cochlear implants and didn't have them yet. We needed to suddenly, small district, we did not have the resources of American Sign Language like we do at university. And so we needed an interpreter, and like right away, and he had some learning disabilities as well. So we needed somebody that could provide para support and be an interpreter and work with the special ed teacher and the nurse. He was about to get surgery to get the cochlear implants. We were able, I don't honestly know how, but we were able to find an interpreter who could serve as his para. She was a godsend for that kid, right? She was not in our budget to start the year, but we figured it out. And we got her in there working with that kid. As he got his cochlear implants and could start to hear for the first time in his life, which is amazing. Then she could transition to being more the para for his academic needs, and we were able to use her to help other students as well. But as an administrator, you get to be that person coming up with some of the creative supports. You get to be the one that helps figure out how to make the budget work, how to do that recruiting, how to support the family and the student. And sometimes it doesn't go as fast as we would like, as families would like. So making sure we're communicating along the way. We're doing this. We're working on it. We're not letting it fall through the cracks, and we're going to keep you updated as we go. The family was great too. Those are those things that when you're supporting students in their individual needs, that's a really rewarding part of education, and it takes a lot of time and coordination. So sometimes those are things that the special ed teacher or maybe even the principal don't have enough time to do without some extra support. including diverse inclusion, right? I think one of the things that I know a lot of schools do, we have at university also, is letting kids create their own clubs around the interests and identities and all the things that they care about. Supporting that with teacher supervision for sure, but letting kids create things that matter to them. We have a myriad of different clubs. And some of them are curricular related, the German club that's going to work on a field trip and go over to Germany. But a lot of them are just student interest things, right? Our little gaming club turned into our esports team eventually. We have all sorts of different student interests and passions that become clubs. And that's a way for them to feel like they have a sense of where they belong at school, in addition to really helping support continued participation in extracurriculars. I think when we talk about those identity programs, when you ask a kid, like, who are you? Usually the first thing they say is some program they're a part of, right? I'm a baseball player. I'm a drama kid. I'm a sousaphone player, right? Whatever it is, if we can build those identity programs for kids and support them, even if it's small. This year, our school, for the first time in 30 years, the boys were in the state championship game. Super exciting, right? We're down at the Coliseum. I'm getting to supervise it. There are all tons of people there. And I had to hurry straight from there right back to, it was actually in our church building, my daughter's play. And they had, it's not a super, 50 people maybe fit in there, 60 people. And they did an amazing job. And for those boys on the basketball court, it was a huge deal for them. And for those kids on the stage, it was a huge deal for them. And the size of the audience didn't really change that. The size of the venue, it was something they'd worked hard for. It was something they cared about. It was something they were doing well. And it was something we as adults get to celebrate together. So building that inclusion comes a lot with finding, where do you belong? Where do you fit? How do we make sure that everybody has that?
What does an effective superintendent board relationship look like to you, particularly around communication, decision-making, and governance role?
That is a huge, important part of the job. And I will definitely rely on conversations with Superintendent Bodie to talk about how you guys have done that here. The ability for us to work together, to communicate well, can help keep, I've seen it done both ways, right? If we're communicating well, if we're on the same page, if we're casting a good vision for the school in a way that doesn't have 500 people at every board meeting and screaming and yelling and staff worried about what's happening with jobs, we're in the middle of some big things, right? With declining enrollment, with state budget changes, with all of the challenges around facility plan development, strategic plans. There's a lot of big things going on, but if we can communicate well, if we can make sure that people feel like we're not asleep at the wheel, we're not pushing rogue agendas, we're working together to do what's best for kids, and we're going to communicate with each other and with stakeholders in a way that can keep things calm and trusting, then parents, staff, students, all those people can do their roles really well also without having to worry about all the drama happening in this room. So that's going to look like individual communication to make sure that we're on the same page, that planning for board meetings, that communication in board meetings, that we're working together as a team, and that you don't feel like you're out of the loop. I don't feel like I'm surprised by new goals that I didn't know about, that we're having that communication regularly so that we can continue to push things forward in a positive way.
What do you do to encourage participation of employees in the organizational decisions?
Participation of employees in organizational decisions. So I think we find different people are passionate about different things. I'll use facility master planning because I know that's a big deal right now. There are probably people that you've been surprised really care about that. And there are probably people that you expected really cared about that. But I think making sure that there's an open invitation to have those discussions. As we were walking around talking about facilities stuff, I know there's been a lot of communication about different ideas and what's this possibility and what's that. And there's a committee that's meeting once a month, if I remember right. There's a lot of opportunities for people to speak into those organizational decisions. Even the way this superintendent search has gone, I've been in front of a lot of different groups at a lot of different times of the day in ways that made it clear that you wanted people to be able to feel like they had access to the decision. For employees, you're talking about their livelihood, you're talking about their career that they're passionate about, you're talking about the way that they are choosing to make a difference in the world. So it matters deeply to them how we do that. And they want to be able to do it together and not things be done to them. And sometimes they don't care, right? But giving them the opportunity to speak into those things that they do care about and trusting that they're not going to be met with someone lashing out at them, that it's okay to dissent, and that we'll explain when we disagree, because we're not always going to come to a consensus on everything. But they'll at least know the reasons and that what they said was listened to. And again, there's a lot of different ways that can look. It can look like open forum things. It can look like, please contact these people who are your representatives on a committee to make sure that they're hearing your voice. Some people aren't comfortable telling their supervisor something they disagree with, but they'll tell a colleague who is comfortable. And we need to take those things seriously and listen well to that. And also then communicate out in a way that's non-threatening or judgmental, but explains our thinking and why we want to do what we do, and that it's in keeping with our plans and with what we think is best for students.
Describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision or address a significant problem directly. What did you do and what did you learn?
A time with a difficult decision that I had to address directly, and then what did I do? What did I learn? Maybe the first thing that comes to mind is personnel decisions. The first or second year that I was an administrator, we had a reduction in force, and there was a good young teacher. She was the last one hired, and so she was by policy going to be the one whose job was eliminated. And she had done pretty well that year. I mean, for a new teacher, she had done well. Communicating early with her, not in a, like, I try hard not to, let me put this a different way. Sometimes I brainstorm out loud and create uncertainty that I don't need to. So I've learned a little bit of that, that communicating things has to be done intentionally and well. If we're brainstorming about a reduction in force, you're talking about people's jobs. And so you don't want to just be spitballing and make people worry unnecessarily. But you also want to give them enough early notice. So in her case, we were able to help her find another job in another district. And as far as I know, she did really well. But to make sure that we could early on say, okay, this is what we're going to have to do based on budget. This is how we're going to do it so that we don't have an entire staff of people worried about their job. But then the person who it directly affected, we supported her in being able to move forward positively and got her good recommendations and made sure that people knew there was not anything wrong with her is why she lost the job. Those communication things are difficult, right? And in that case, nobody did anything wrong. It was just a budget thing. But even in that case, making sure that we communicated not too early, not too late, in a way that honored the people involved. In some other HR decisions I've had to make where I'm letting someone go based on performance, I think in a couple cases, I needed to be more clear about the expectations before we made that call. I needed to make sure that I was growing in that. And I think that's an area I've grown a lot in over the last several years. That when there's improvement needed, we're really clear about what that looks like and how to show it. Because saying you need to get better at something doesn't give them the indicators for how to show they've gotten better at it. I had a teacher a long time ago now we gave him a 4th year of probationary status with a mentor to work through some issues and continue to grow, to hopefully be able to stay long term. And in that case, it didn't work out. But I think by the time we got to the end of that 4th year, the mentor that had been working with him, there was a little more clarity around why we were making the decision rather than just jumping into it. And in other cases, improvement plans have worked great, that we've been able to grow through issues and get better at things. So I think the clarity around expectations has been an area I've grown in those HR things in particular.
How do you balance honoring a district's existing strengths and strategic plan while also moving the organization forward to address existing challenges?
That's a great question. And I think in the case of SS in particular, we're in a great spot for that right now because we have 2 years left of the strategic plan that has been in place for 3 years. Indicators are really good. I'm not showing up at a time where it's like, oh, we better hurry and come up with a new one. We've got 2 years to work on that. Now, certainly there's facilities and other things that we're in the middle of. But to take something that's going really well, to take something that I can join in and figure out my part in without changing everything right away is an awesome opportunity. To come into a very stable staff, right? To come into a place that there's a lot of institutional knowledge that can help me learn what's going really well. And then to collaborate together with those directors, administrators, teachers, staff, community members, board members, to collaborate together for what comes next while honoring all the great things that have come before us. One of the things, as a history teacher, I work really hard to remember that every generation throughout history has believed they were in a unique spot, and they've all been right. And we have to keep in mind what's come before us, how we got here, and waiting out here with all of the 108 years now of Estes Park history, looking at those pictures of how it's developed over the years. We need to keep in mind the history of how we got to where we are, and we also need to look forward for where we want to be next and how things are changing and developing along the way. And I'm going to keep that history in mind because it matters to me, and because that foundation is good and important, but we also can't get stuck there. We've got to continue to move forward also while still honoring all the people that got us here.
What kind of authority do you give to the principals, and how do you hold them accountable?
The authority I give to principals and how to hold them accountable. I think in this particular area, because I've been a principal for the last, principal and assistant principal for the last 14 years, I have quite a bit of experience and a whole lot of connections with other people that are doing it well also. And so understanding that they need to be able to let their style, their personality, their strengths be the way they lead in their building, and that no two of us are alike, right? That I don't expect people to do things exactly as I would do it, but what we do get to do is decide the values that underpin that. So the way that we respect students can come out in different ways, but we know that the foundation is we respect students. The way that we honor parents and their role in a kid's lives can come out in different ways, but the starting point is we value and honor the parents and their role in the life of a kid. So I think part of that is that communication, me learning them and learning to trust them and them learning to trust me, and then having honest questioning conversations. So tell me why you did that way. Tell me what you're thinking with this program. Tell me what you need for your teachers and your staff. And building that communication so that we can have the conversations that keep us aligned in the values, even if like the particulars of how we get there might be different. And then when something doesn't go right, we've built that trust and communication to say, let's have a conversation right now, right? And that's going to be, hopefully no one else will ever know about it. But it'll be that little course correction along the way of let's make sure we're doing things the right way for the right reasons and talking through it together. And if we make adjustments or if we have to make apologies occasionally, so be it. But that we're keeping those values at the core of how we're doing it and having conversations. I think the best accountability happens in little conversations when we see something instead of, oh man, you noticed that 6 months ago and you never said anything to me about it. That becomes devastating to trust, right? Because now you're wondering, what other things have you not told me? So if we keep that communication open, then we can build that together. Okay.
Well, perfect timing. So do you have any questions for us at this time?
Oh, okay. I thought that was like 9 minutes for 9 more questions or something. So
We can make that happen.
Okay. I think, I mean, some of the questions I got to ask you guys in the last round of interviews, having seen more specifically a lot of things that are exciting things and challenging things that are going on, what do you see as like the things on the horizon for the next year or so? Obviously, for me, the first thing is build relationships and trust and get to know people. But what's the next thing as a board? What's the next thing you want your superintendent doing?
AI, because it's coming fast and it's going to be big. So we need to figure out ahead of time what the board and what the superintendent is going to do to their school.
Yeah, and it's changing fast every day too. That's good to know. Thank you. Anything else? What are the other things?
I think the other thing, just in that first year, along with the learning, is maintaining the momentum, both in the academics, the test scores, also our perception surveys with our students, our community, our parents, and staff, and making sure all those continue to trend upward and continuing that momentum. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an exciting thing that's happening right now. So
Embracing the strategic plan that we already have in place, and then, of course, the new master plan that's being created. Those are going to be huge fronts. And then student voice is really important to us. So we want to make sure that we continue that. Ruby created the superintendent council, and so we would hope to see that continued and thriving.
yeah, I got to meet 2 of those students today because they were asking me questions in the forum. And I love that. If I remember it, that's every Wednesday morning. And then they also represent you at the board, right? So I love to be able to continue those things. We do the same at university with having students on the board. And it's been a really positive thing for that student voice. And then continuing to listen to all the other kids too at different events. But yeah. In terms of leadership style, I know you have a really good superintendent who you wish wasn't leaving you, but it seems like she's pretty committed to that at this point. If not, maybe you should tell me now. What is it in terms of style that you feel like is a good fit for your current leaders and district? What's the style of leadership you're looking for?
So for me, I mean, I've been in the district for a while. My kids grew up here, graduated from here, and I've seen a lot of different leaders come and go. For me, I like what Ruby brings to us is she's very honest and keeps us highly informed and is willing to work with us and share ideas with us. Her ideas that she has brought forth and her enthusiasm and her appreciation for students and everything, every decision is student-centered. I really appreciate that leadership style, her availability to us and her willingness to answer questions. And sometimes we may disagree on a point, but she takes the time to sit down and explain her whys and how it helps the students. And I think just having that patience with us, because I don't come from an education background, and her ability to have that patience to sit and explain it, I very much appreciate that leadership style. I appreciate in her how she works and honors our staff and every student. I highly appreciate that in leadership.
And then, yeah, leadership style, listening and um, listening and learning as a first point, understanding the different perspectives of those who are coming into that conversation to find the best outcome, and just understanding that everyone is here for the same reason, for these kids, to educate them well. And even when there's disagreements, we're coming at it with the same goal in mind, different ideas how to get there. So.
Ruby has built amazing relationships within the community that have really benefit the school district. And so that is very important to, build those relationships, and you have already spoken to that. So that's good. Another thing is Ruby's incredibly dedicated and hardworking, and she does not ask anything of anyone that she would not take on herself.
So I know I said it was great to come to a place that's functioning so well. It's also a little intimidating. So thank you. And man, yeah.
We do have high expectations here. And that's, we do believe that people can rise to them, the same as with our students, so, and we're here to support the next superintendent in that as well. So we know there's going to be a learning curve. We know the next person coming in is not going to be Ruby Bodie, and we're excited for who's going to join us.
Correct. And that's the thing. We're on an upward trend, but we still have a long ways to go, right? We can still continue to improve even beyond where we are right now.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions I have for now. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
We're going to recess for 5 minutes.
Testing, testing. Hello.
Technically can't.
It's a meeting. To the mantra, it's a meeting of the board in public.
Welcome, Ms. Wright. We appreciate you being here. Just a reminder, you'll have 45 minutes this evening or afternoon. So starting with your first question, you've spent a full day in the district. What are your thoughts and highlights of the day? What do you know now that you didn't know before? And why do you feel you're a good fit for the superintendent position in the Estes Park community?
Well, first off, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been a tremendous experience. So no matter what happens, I hope that the district finds the right person. Ultimately, that's what we want, because that's good for kids. So I think after spending a full day in the district, what was really nice to see, I think sometimes with these interviews and these sorts of processes, you don't get to see staff, you don't get to interact with students, even though they're busy. It was a brief period of time, and just have some conversations. And that's what was really, really stood out to me. The tours are helpful. So putting eyes on something and having a discussion, right? Something that I may have looked at on a website, then I get to see it in person is incredibly helpful, especially for somebody from out of town. But being able to talk to the students who, kudos to the district, did a fantastic job, really listening and being engaged, and then coming out and having follow-up questions for us, which was just, was really, really nice to see. That is, I don't think you would see that everywhere. So I think that was the highlight for me. And I think for whatever reason, I was the most nervous going into the student forum, because, it just after, depending on what order we went in and you're talking at them for a while, you just never know what you're going to get. And that's okay. It's part of being in education. It's part of working with kids, but they did a fantastic job. I really, really was impressed. So I think that was a standout moment for me. As far as my fit, I feel as though some of the stuff I talked about resonated, whenever in the community forum, resonated just, based on body language or facial expression, things of that nature. One of the students came out and he said, well, I felt like you were really student-centered, and I am. That I want students to be their best selves. And I see the role as being the facilitator to help everybody in the district have our kids be their best selves. And so I'm going to, work to eliminate roadblocks and make sure that we have the right access to instructional materials and that we're implementing the right programs to ensure that what we're doing is the right thing for kids and that we're improving their outcomes. So I think that's why I might be a good fit here.
How do you intend to establish clear accountability structures within our district to ensure that all stakeholders, including staff, administrators, and students, are held to high standards of performance and conduct?
Sure. So we talked about this a little bit with the admin team, and I said, one of the ways that we can do that is and whether it's, building level to teacher or district level to building level, right, is through the use of data, right? So sometimes things can be, it's personal, and but the data doesn't lie. So the data is going to tell a story. So being able to take the data that we're being given and sort of disaggregate it and really take a look at it is going to help us to have conversations around student performance, around teacher performance. And what I said to the staff, and I'll say again tonight, is That's not a gotcha. My job is then to say to them, okay, so we're struggling. What do you need in order to, you know, improve? What do you need to be able to deliver something different so that your students are able to succeed? I don't like the concept of a gotcha. And I know that, we're administrators and they're teachers. I talked in the parent forum about, I can be friendly. I can want to know everything about you and your kids and all the things, but we aren't friends. Because at some point, I'm going to ask you to do something that you don't want to do. And that's just the way that it is. Administration is lonely. So I think, using data, being building trust and getting people comfortable to say that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for things to go wrong, but that the goal is that you are a professional, I'm a professional, and we're going to come up with strategies to make improvement. Now, if we have those conversations numerous times and there still is an improvement, right, then that's a different process entirely, and people would have to be held accountable for that. But as I said to the staff last night, all of you, right, are certified by the state of Colorado. I'm coming to you with an understanding that you are a professional and I am also a professional. And at times, even professionals need a little bit of grace. So there's that. As far as for students, I think I had a couple of parent questions about discipline and restorative practices and all of these things and bullying. And I said, we're not going to get into sort of the nuances and definition of bullying, as because there are existing definitions and structure around that particular term, which is a hot button issue. I said, but my stance is that a code of conduct and expectations for behavior can exist at the same time that we recognize that we are a learning organization and our job is to teach kids. I would much rather them make mistakes while they're in school rather than when they're out in the community and they're relying on a paycheck and they have families and all of the other things. So, that being said, there's some lines in the sand, right? And if there's something that's unsafe, if it truly, it's violating the code of conduct, then the students are going to be held accountable. But the idea that we can be teaching students how to be good humans can coexist with accountability and clear expectations for behavior. And that's for everybody, right? We have to model that behavior too. And if, unfortunately it happens from time to time, if a staff member is inappropriate or is crossing one of those lines, then they would be held accountable too. But again, we all need to be able to grow together. These are tough jobs. And as I said to the students today, it's so much more challenging to be a high school student today than it was the many decades ago when I was in high school, the things they have to deal with. So we want to support them through that. And I always say to kids, my whole time in education, I've said, I just want to keep you from making the really big mistakes. Some mistakes are okay, but we all make mistakes. We want educators that can talk to them about making mistakes. I worked with somebody years ago who, I don't give test corrections because I never needed them. And I said, that's an absolutely ridiculous statement, right? The goal is to learn something, really learn something and learn how to use something. And the idea that you get one shot at it and you're done, I said, I was like, what are you doing? Like that's horrible. What a horrible message to send to kids. Because we get to do stuff over and over and over again until we get it right. So I think, all of those things can coexist, but they are not criminal masterminds. Bad things happen and we'll deal with it. But the rest of it is, we're going to work through this and we're going to support you. And, the goal is you come out a better human than when you came to us.
Thank you. How will you demonstrate your commitment to the community as superintendent, ensuring that the needs and aspirations of our stakeholders are prioritized and addressed?
So I'm very impressed with, the turnout last night and people really being invested in finding out more about us and asking questions because they're passionate about the district and the district's performance. So I would continue to build on what's been established here and the relationships that are here. We came over today, we were kind of walking around town, and I came into the library. I got a soft spot for libraries and kind of was scoping it out and talked to a couple of the staff. And I know they're getting ready to undergo a renovation, but it's going to be more of that. So sometimes I'm going to have to do the outreach, and I'm going to have to go and, knock on doors and offer to have some conversations. And then other times, we're going to open the doors of the school and invite people in. I think the best thing is hearing some of the projects, and the community comes in and views the projects, or the community comes in and hears student presentations. It's fantastic. In a more remote community, all of these kids, their first jobs are going to be here. So having a good understanding of what their first employers want to see in these kids, that's going to help us, right? Just like when we want to know at each transition, right? When you leave a grade level, right? We want to make sure that the standards they've met align with what we think in the next grade level where they're coming, right? They should be coming to us with this, and this. We want that alignment. Well, it's the same thing. We want alignment with what the community values and what the community thinks is important, because we want kids to stay and have families and build their lives here and not all go down into the valley or go somewhere else. You want to keep people here, and the best way to do that is to set them up to be successful.
What experience do you have recruiting and retaining high quality staff, teachers, particularly in places where housing, compensation, or affordability may be barriers?
I think this is a tough one. There's only so much you can do with funding structures. There's only so much you can do with compensation. We talked a lot last night in the parent and the family forum, and I talked with staff because I had a staff directly ask me, like, what can you do? It is not at the sole discretion of the superintendent to determine that, right? This is, that's not how it works. And I did explain that to them. But I said, if there are ways that I can advocate, at the state level for changes, if there's things that we can do, I am more than happy to do that for them. I think the biggest thing though is that figuring out ways to lean into what makes the district special, right? For staff, for them to have some measure of autonomy where they can, for them to be able to pursue their passions when they can, making sure that it's a climate where people want to come to work, right? Everybody that went into education had an understanding of where the pay scale was, right? Nobody went into education to be independently wealthy. They just didn't. So they already have that passion. They have that understanding. So now how can we enhance the things that we're doing and the things that we're able to offer to them that makes them want to stay, right? Maybe there's a club that they want to be able to, they want to, show their passion to a group of students, or they want to do some of those things, then we should be able to try and facilitate some of those things for them. Unfortunately, as we know, it can't always be about dollars. And I said to them last night, I said, I can't put something forward that would jeopardize the long-term, fiscal sustainability of the district. And they wouldn't want that either, right? So a short-term gain right now, and then 5 or 10 years from now, the district, is unable to maintain that. So that's just that's what happens. I said, it's not always the answer you want to hear, but then it's those other things. And I do think, giving them opportunities to express themselves, to show a talent, to find their spot, their thing that they're really passionate about is going to keep people here. So I think that's what we have to lean into.
What leadership habits and behaviors do you have that demonstrate you are an instructional leader for the school district, and give us an example?
So I think that I definitely come from a very reflective mindset. So I'm very reflective of my own practice. I have to take a close look at, when I do these sorts of things, when I do anything, go back and kind of reflect and sort of play it back and see, you know, what could I have done differently, or could I have said something differently? And that's what good educators need to be able to do. They need to be able to be comfortable with analyzing their instruction, right? What I have to be able to do as an instructional leader is assist the buildings in making sure that teachers have time to do that, making sure that they understand the data that they're, and you know, that for the assessments that they're taking. We take tons of data all the time. Do they have the time and the level of understanding to be able to take that data and then inform their instruction in a timely manner? Because if we're not turning right around and taking a look at that, then that opportunity has passed us by, or now you're trying to build skills when you already are missing a piece. So in my role is helping them to have those conversations, making sure that the building has time to have those conversations. Building principals and assistant principals have a ton of stuff on their plate. My role is to make sure they still have time to be an instructional leader. And as the instructional leader of the instructional leaders, right, it's making sure they also have a comfort level with being reflective, and that they have a comfort level with understanding the data, right? And that's something that we all can do together. And I may notice something, or I may have a question about something that they didn't, right? And then we work together to come up with a plan, and we work together to support the teachers. But I think at this level, so when we've rolled out various programs, right now we're rolling out the EL curriculum at the elementary level. So that has taken a lot of professional development. We partnered with EL Education to do some coaching. And my role in that is to also go through the coaching and also go through the professional development. So not only are the teachers sitting and they're going through the modules and they're talking with those, with the EL coaches, the administrators are also doing that. We're also getting on calls separately to talk through, okay, here's what we should be looking for. And we developed a look for tool so that we could go into the classrooms and really briefly some analysis on what we're seeing, not an evaluation by any stretch of the imagination. And then we give that feedback to the teachers. So I have to do some of the same things when we roll out programs or when we're being an instructional leader. If I can't go into a classroom and talk to you about it in a way that shows that that I understand it as well, then nobody's going to take anything that I say seriously. So we have to take the time to be able to do that too. That's valuable work.
As superintendent, how will you foster an atmosphere in the district where teachers and staff feel supported, empowered, valued, and able to reach their full potential?
So my stance is, none of these districts would exist without all the people, right, that are doing the jobs, and some of the jobs are really, really tough, right? Regardless of title, everybody's working really hard. Everybody is a professional. Everybody needs to be respected. That is my stance. I came from the self-contained world. Had a lot of paraprofessionals that I worked with that those rooms wouldn't function. I could be doing a great job, but there's no way those rooms would have functioned without those individuals being there. And unfortunately, as we know, they're some of the lowest compensated people in education. But the district wouldn't work without them. So my stance is, when we were in those rooms, everybody was a teacher. Everybody was on equal footing. Now behind closed doors, when you have to do some management, you have to do some planning. Yes, then right, the teacher is the instructional leader. That is the way that it is. But in front of the students, everybody was respected, right? Because every now and again you'd get kids that would, well, I'm only going to talk to this person, or I'm only going to, nope. We are all people that you can talk to. We are all people that can help you with your problems, all of those things. And that's my, that's my mindset in general, is that, I respect everybody, and I respect the importance of their role. And it's different than my role, and that's okay. But you know what? If we lost all of them, the district would be really in a really bad place. And I can't always say that if I wasn't there at this level, right, for a little bit, it's different. I mean, the buildings wouldn't run. So, as a superintendent, you have to be aware of that, and you have to show those people that you value them and that you value the day-to-day work that they're doing every day for the buildings, to keep the buildings clean, to keep the buildings running, to keep the kids safe, to get them to and from their homes, all of those things. So I really try hard to value them. And I think that is the climate, right? That we all respect one another, that every job here is important in terms of moving kids forward.
Describe your experience supporting special education, multilingual learners, and inclusive practices for diverse student needs.
So in the last 2 districts that I've been in, we've worked really hard to shift to a more inclusive model. Did some work with Syracuse University a couple of years ago, and all around co-teaching and inclusion and all of that. And, in my time in special education, what I've found is that a lot of the things that we do in special ed to break down the barriers, right, to make sure that kids have access, they're pretty good for all of the students, to be quite honest with you. And a lot of times when you're offering something to one student, the whole room could benefit. The power of inclusion is there's a lot of aspects to it, but I think it helps kids to realize that everybody learns something in a different way, right? And we want them to learn how they learn. And we talk to kids all the time about, listen, you may be a math rock star, and math might have been really hard for me, right? But we could both be out in the world and be successful. In terms of inclusion, getting kids to realize that not everybody is the same as everybody else, and that's okay, and they can still be successful. I was thrilled that some of the special ed kids that have a higher level of need were still, to the best of their ability, they're going to participate in the forum. Absolutely, they participate in the forum. Whether it's the forum, whether it's athletics or extracurriculars, it may not look the same as everybody else, but that's okay. It's still a valuable experience for them. In terms of what works in the classroom and what works in terms of differentiation and all of those sorts of things. So putting things in place at the tier 1 level to acknowledge that kids learn things in a different way, to acknowledge that there's more than one way to deliver content. And you're going to then get more kids participating. You're going to get more kids to tap into their learning, looking for ways for it to be more authentic, right? One of the ways that we can tap into students' background knowledge, right? Have them relate it to something that they've already seen in their community, what they see or they hear. We had a co-taught biology class, and I was observing, and the whole back of the room was in camouflage. And the teacher's talking about the life cycle of various animals and predators and prey and all of these things. Whole back of the room in camouflage. They're all hunters. And it was a missed opportunity. And so we talked about that afterwards. And I said, you think about it, they all hunt. I said, they all hunt turkeys at different times. I said, think about the opportunity then for those kids, because those kids are sitting in the back of the room right now going, I'm just going to get through this class. If you had reeled them in to talk about that, now you're tapping into that background knowledge. You're tapping into a different way for them to relate to the curriculum. That's all inclusion. That's all the things that we need to do for our special ed kids, but it's also good for everybody else. Movement breaks, right? Giving things, talking about something, but also giving a visual to reference, right? So what we usually say, pairing auditory information with visuals, right? Yeah, a lot of us would do better, may do better one way or the other, but if you give us both, well, now I got it, right? So it's those sorts of things, and that's been my experience over the years, is that a lot of times, you look at the accommodations on an individualized plan, and most of those things would work for everybody in the room. It's just we have determined in this particular instance that without those things, that child wouldn't be successful. So, and sometimes there's a little bit of apprehension around some of those things. And it's like, well, the other kids have noticed that, so-and-so only has to work for, 10 minutes and then they get a break. And my response is, well, that's what that particular individual needs to be successful. But if you want to talk about a way that maybe we could have everybody get a break after 10 or 15 minutes. I think that, maybe everybody would benefit from that at times. It's not about everybody getting the same thing. It's about really knowing your kids and then delivering supports that they need in order to best demonstrate what they know.
What does an effective superintendent board relationship look like to you, particularly around communication, decision-making, and governance role?
So, the board does that higher level thinking and sets the vision and the policy, right, and the direction. The superintendent serves at the pleasure of the Board of Education and then takes that work and brings it to the district and then helps the building leaders and helps the staff then implement those goals and that vision. The way that I have a very good relationship with my current board, albeit not in a superintendent role. And, I see it as a partnership. I think the most effective board and superintendent relationships are going to be a partnership where we can come to an agreement on what is best for the kids in the district, what the kids need in order to be successful, and then your perspectives and my perspective, and then it becomes that open dialogue to talk about, okay, here are the constraints, right? Here are the things that we have to be mindful of, because again, we don't want to put anything out there that we can't sustain long term. But at the same time, right, here are the things that we can do together in order to move the district forward. So for me, it would be a true partnership in terms of alignment between where you feel you want the district to be. Does that align with where I feel like I want to go as a superintendent and how I want to help those administrators and those teams, move the kids forward?
What do you do to encourage participation of employees in organizational decisions?
So I think, initially coming in, any new administrator, there's going to be some trepidation in terms of like, oh, does he really want me to say what I feel, or does he really want my decision, right? And I've been in organizations where they do like the sensing session, and it's like, nope, my stance, everybody's doing a fabulous job, I'm not saying anything. You don't want that type of organization. You want to build some trust. That starts with small things, right? Making sure that if somebody brings something to your attention, that you follow up and you get back to them. If they talk to you about something and you can't do it, that you come back and you have a conversation with them. So if you want to get them involved, then you have to show that their voice matters. You have to show that you are taking that into consideration, what they want. As I said in the parent forum, though, last night, I said that doesn't mean, and I think I said it with the students too, right? That doesn't mean that you get whatever you want, right? There's still going to be some give and take. There's going to be things that I'm thinking of that we have to consider that they may not have thought of. And so then it's okay to have a conversation about that. I would love to have staff want to be more involved in the decision-making, in, the direction that we're headed and the things that we want to do, because, all of us, that sort of group collective, there's so many years of experience and different perspectives and knowing the kids in a different way than I ever will. And they bring all of that to the table. So it can't be a situation where I'm sitting and I'm just making decisions in isolation, or we were making decisions in isolation, and it's sort of that top-down approach. Now, there are times where things have to be a directive, and we can't always get there. And, whether there's time constraints, whether there's particular, regulatory requirements, and that happens. But you can weather those if in the other opportunities you're able to build that group consensus with them. And so I think that it's a lot of work and it will take some time. That initially it's going to be, everybody's going to tell me that everything, well, one of two things could happen. Everybody's going to tell me everything's great, even if it isn't, or I'm going to get everybody's list, it's going to be like the airing of grievances. And then they're going to step back and see what I do with it. Right. Oh, well, now let's see what he does with that. And either way, I think you still have to build the relationship. You look to address some small things on those lists and make them feel heard. And then over time, you get to the point, hopefully, where you have some shared decision making, which would be fantastic.
Describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision or address a significant problem directly. What did you do and what did you learn?
Well, I'll talk about an issue with a teacher. So we had a teacher, and there were some students that reported some rather inappropriate behavior. And then very shortly thereafter, a teacher came and reported there were some concerns. And it was a challenging situation. The teacher was also connected to my home district, about 10 minutes away, and their spouse was a district level administrator that had some involvement with just one, the districts are about 10 miles apart. So it was a bit of a complicated situation, but we stuck to our what we do for one, we try to do for everyone for the most part. We try to be consistent. So we looked at the approach. This was dealing directly with students. So we followed our protocol. And then the teachers unit wanted to engage the New York State rep, and which was something that we did not have to do. This was not a teacher that had tenure in the state of New York, but we had that conversation, and we said, okay, we'll engage in that process as well. And I ended up having a few meetings, and we had meetings together, and we came to the decision between the teachers unit and the district that that the allegations had some merit, and then we proceeded to terminate that teacher. But it was kind of a sticky situation, just given the nature of the relationships there. But I think we approached it the right way. I think the thing that was a little bit different was engaging the New York State teachers rep. But okay, like we can go through this and talk it through, and they actually ended up being very reasonable. So I think what I learned in that is that sometimes there is a little bit of that give and take. I could have very easily put my foot down and said, I don't have to do that. I don't have to give you a reason in this particular situation. This is this is a teacher that doesn't have tenure. But then the ripples in the pond, right? Then now the teachers unit is kind of up in arms, and the long-term effects of that, rather than building a working relationship with the president of the teachers unit to say that behavior is not something that we want in your unit, and that is not something that we want in the district. And we were able to get to the point where we could kind of lock arms on that and say, that's it. And so it was good. I think a little bit of a give, and we ended up at the right outcome anyway. And the person wasn't in the building any longer. It wasn't like they were there waiting and still around students. Like all of that was handled. But build some inroads with the unit as well, because at some point I'll need it. So.
How do you balance honoring a district's existing strengths and strategic plan while also moving the organization forward to address existing challenges?
So coming into a position, right, none of us, that sit here before you should be looking to just wipe everything out and start over, right? There are a lot of great things happening. And so even if a district is struggling, there are still good things happening. And I think that you have to make sure that you're able to highlight some of those things and acknowledge some of those things, because it can sometimes feel like, all the administrators think that the sky is always falling, and that nothing we do is good enough. So I think, I was very impressed with the strategic plan. I've said that across the forums. I'm very impressed with the work that was done on the global outcomes. what we would want to do is have a lot of conversations with the admin team, have a lot of conversations with the staff. How are those things going? What are the challenges, right? And then as you're in this role and you're doing that work, all right, so if there are barriers, then that's what we look to tackle. If there are gaps, when we're not meeting a particular marker, right? So if we're not meeting our academic goals, where are the gaps? What's happening? And then tackling those pieces. And then, they're in year 3 of the 5-year cycle. So then going into next year, it's already starting to talk about, okay, let's get a committee back together. Let's get stakeholders back together to talk about, here's where we're at this point. What are you seeing? Again, what are those gaps? And now working to develop the next plan. So it should be an ongoing process of being able to take that information and get all the stakeholders in the room and say, now we've lived with this for a couple of years. Are these still true? Right. And if they go right to, oh, well, no, right. Then really having a conversation about, what is that particular aspect missing, or about that definition that you feel doesn't meet it. But again, it's not scrapping everything. We don't want to end up with initiative fatigue. We don't want to end up with, oh, well, this is just another thing. You really want it to be internalized, and nope, this is what we do. This is how we work with kids. And this is what's going to make them their best selves. But coming in and just wiping everything out and saying, nope, we're going to do it this particular way is just a recipe for disaster.
What kind of authority do you give to principals, and how do you hold them accountable?
So I respect the principal's ability to run their buildings again, right? They've reached a level in their career as professionals, and they were appointed to be the principal in the building. I was not appointed to be the principal in the building. My job is that if they need something, if they are unable to do something, that I help them to figure out how we can get that done. So I do give, that autonomy, that's their purview. That's what they operate in. They run those buildings. Now, the worst thing that I can do is come in and circle behind them and undercut them and make decisions right around them, all of those things, because then they'll lose their building. So even if we were worried about a set of decisions that a principal was making, it doesn't solve the problem for me to come in behind them and undercut them, because now they're going to have an even harder time making decisions and implementing those things, because they're going to lose their staff. They're going to be like, oh, well, we don't have to worry about the principal, because the superintendent is kind of circling behind them. So, I have to know my lane too. And my lane is to come from the angle of, if you make a mistake or something happens, right, that how do I support you? How do we work through this? Right? How do we move forward? And not come in behind them. And unfortunately, I've worked with some fantastic superintendents, and in a small district, sometimes it happens, and staff pick up on it right away, right? When somebody kind of circles in and I say something, I haven't had a conversation with one of my principals, and then I say something or I do something that maybe isn't quite perfectly aligned, right away, staff are going to kind of pounce on that. So it takes a lot of communication and a lot of trust between us. But I try hard to respect, another administrator's, professional ability. There is a level of professional discretion there. And I'm more in that support role.
So do you have any questions for us at this time?
Oh, I mean, I think that so much has been answered over there's just so much information. And I think that's the part of this that's been so interesting, is it's like, how much information can you digest in a really compressed period of time? I think it was fantastic experience to get eyes on and really see and talk to people and kind of just and be in the district. It's been very, very helpful. I'm sure I would, if I'm the successful candidate, I will have lots of other questions and other resources and starting to do a deep dive into different areas and making sure that I'm getting up to speed as quickly as possible. The process, I think, for the most part, has been fairly straightforward and clear in terms of the kind of getting everybody's involvement and getting feedback from all the stakeholders, and then working with the the consultants and laying out the timelines, all of that. So that's been very helpful. So I don't know if I normally, you don't want to leave and say, oh, I don't have any other questions. I'm sure I will later on. It, even with the community, we've been driving around all day and just seeing the different, like where people live and the different types of housing that the kids are in and all the different things, and just kind of just getting the lay of the land, answering those questions as well. But no, I don't think that I have any other questions at this point. Like I said, if I were your successful candidate, then I'm sure the open dialogue would begin. So, but thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. So the board is going to take a 10-minute recess. Chris, we ready? Recording? All right, it is now 5:20. Chris, if you'll conduct a board roll call, please.
Director Furry,
Here.
Director Shockett,
Here.
Director Ruderski,
Here.
Director Wiss.
Here.
Moving on to agenda 4. The board, having named more than one finalist and having conducted interviews with each of the finalists in a forum open to the public, may proceed into executive session pursuant to CRS Section 24-6402 4I1 and CRS Section 24-6402 4I3 to meet with and instruct the district superintendent search consultants in order to prioritize for purpose of negotiation and one or more finalists, and to begin contract negotiations concerning the terms of employment contract with one or more finalists for the position of superintendent. Do I have a motion to go into executive session for the previously stated purpose?
Do I have to say the whole thing? Okay. I move that the board proceed into executive session, having named more than one finalist and having conducted interviews with each of the finalists in a forum open to the public, proceed into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6402 411 and CRS 24-6402 413 to meet with and instruct the district superintendent search consultants in order to prioritize for purposes of negotiation one or more finalists, and to begin contract negotiations concerning the terms of an employment contract with one or more finalists for the position of superintendent.
Director Shockett made the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Director Wiss made second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, Chris, please conduct a board roll call.
Director Furry,
Aye.
Director Shockett,
Aye.
Director Ruderski,
Aye.
Director Wiss.
Aye.
The motion passes. Joining the board in executive session this evening is HYU Representative Brian Ewert and David Ball. We have no members of the public in the room. It is now 5:22 p.m. and the board will move into executive session. It is now 7:14 p.m. The board is reconvened in open session. Moving on to agenda item 5, upcoming meetings. The next regular board meeting is Monday, April 20th, 2026, 5:15 p.m. at Town Hall. Moving on to agenda item 6, adjournment. Would a board member make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you.